Anytime your superstar quarterback comes down with an injury, it's less than ideal. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's not time to panic yet.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, David Drogemeyer, and I've been covering the Chargers for 9 seasons, but this is my 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you so much to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. Really appreciate that. And to make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcasts from. On today's show, we got to talk about the big Justin Herbert injury news. Unfortunately, it's something you never want to see happen, but it happens. It's football. On today's show, we're bringing on Daniel Wade and also Dan Wolkenstein from Chargers Unleashed to talk about how the vibes were like at Chargers training camp and more. And we're going to get into Daniel Wade first. But before we do that, I got to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Here he is, Daniel Wade. Well, Dan, definitely was not expecting to talk about a Justin Herbert injury, but here we are. The Chargers put out a statement saying, following yesterday's practice, Justin Herbert was diagnosed with an injury to the plantar fascia in his right foot. Doctors have recommended approximately 2 weeks in a boot, followed by graduated return to play protocol, with the expectation that he will be ready for the regular season. And so that's good news for me. I'm happy that they are putting out some information, letting us know that they have aspirations of him being ready for week 1. It's critically important. I think right now I feel pretty good about it. I think that he's going to be ready for week 1. That's probably just the optimist in me, but also they haven't made any emergency moves that have made me feel like, okay, they think this is going to be more serious than what it is.
It's pretty interesting that they're even putting out there what the timeline is. I mean, putting out there how long they expect him to be in the boot, putting out there that they expect him to be back for week 1. It's hard to tell how seriously we should take this, but I don't think it should be overlooked, and I don't think the story is over with it yet. And we'll know a lot more once we actually see him out of the boot and working back towards playing. And the other part of it just is this something that, can actually be healed before the start of the regular season? Or is it something that's going to be lingering throughout the entire year, and it's more about managing it other than actually, healing it? So to me, I think it puts the Chargers in a really big predicament, because I think this is a coaching staff that has shown you time and time again that they want to be cautious with these injuries, and they're going to take every precaution to make sure guys aren't pushing it too much and sending guys into the training room and all that. At the same time, this is not a team that can really afford to drop a couple of potential easy games early on in the season. I mean, you start at home against the Raiders, on the road against the Panthers. Those are 2 games you feel very good about winning if you have Justin Herbert. If it's Easton Stick, that's an entirely different story. So I do think they puts them in a predicament, because they want to win this season. If you drop 2 games in a 17-game season, it's just so hard to come back from, especially when you have some juggernauts later on in the season. So I know the kind of question that's been going out there is, hey, could the Chargers regret only keeping Easton Stick and re-signing Easton Stick after the 4-game stretch, which I don't think was as bad compared to other backups as many Chargers fans think. And the good backups are very, very expensive, and there's only a couple of them. But yeah, man, I mean, I think this is serious, and I mean, it should be taken seriously as a part of, hey, until we know he's not missing games, there's reason to be concerned about it. And I also think it's just validation for, taking someone like Joe Alt to try to prevent things like this from happening, even though this is obviously something that wasn't him getting stepped on or anything, we think.
Yeah, no, but of course, it's just the investment on protecting your, $260 million quarterback, right? I think that's just, part of the thought process there, and, giving him bookend tackles to have some protection. But what will him missing time do to this team? Because they're trying to learn a new offense. I mean, I know that they said they threw a ton at him in the offseason programs, and they've already did a lot of their installing, and now they're just putting coats of paint on top of that, trying to, just make sure everything's understood and that it from A to Z. But there's still receivers that are learning this offense, running backs, tight ends that are learning this offense. And you don't have that time to build that chemistry with your quarterback.
Yeah, and that is to me one of the main concerns is more about chemistry. I mean, Justin Herbert, like we've talked about before, he's a superhuman, he's a cyborg, he's just one of those guys that gets things instantly. And so as far as, how he fits in the offense and how he understands the offense, I don't think this will affect him too much. It's not going to keep him out of the classroom, but the actual live bullets or the closest thing you have to live bullets before the season starts, they're all important. And the chemistry with the receivers, especially with such a huge overhaul of the skill position players, it is important to have that. And I think the nice thing is, hey, he has chemistry with Joshua Palmer. It does feel like he's been able to build some sort of rapport with Ladd McConkey. Feels like he's built some rapport with DJ Chark. Those are your top three guys. So if you're feeling good about your connection there, I think you like that. But Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst and, some of these other guys aren't going to get those opportunities, which I think is big. And I think the other part of it is how you evaluate the other players on this roster, especially guys who are contending to make this team or at least contending to get playing time, where it's like those guys don't get as good of an opportunity. That wide receiver room doesn't get as good of an opportunity with Easton Stick and Max Duggan as they would with Justin Herbert. So I think it's layered. I'm not super worried about Justin Herbert picking up this offense or anything like that. But at the same time, it's hard to imagine they would get off to as fast of a start offensively to start their season as they would if he didn't get hurt and had all of this time to prepare.
100%. I mean, this right here is invaluable time to build that chemistry, not only with your receivers, but your offensive line that's in front of you. And unfortunately, he's going to be robbed of that opportunity. We know Justin Herbert's super sharp. We know he's incredibly gifted. So, I think that helps him out. And, he is in his physical prime. So hopefully, with the advancements of modern medicine, they can get him on the field and feeling as good as he possibly can going into the regular season. But, Daniel Popper, I mean, he's so amazing, right? I mean, he so quickly got an expert, a foot expert to talk about this injury. And, I thought it was pretty interesting what he had to say, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, Popper, just another reason, one of many to go subscribe to The Athletic. Got Kenneth Jung, Dr. Kenneth Jung, a foot and ankle consultant for the Los Angeles Rams, who's also an orthopedic surgeon at Cedars-Sinai Curlin Job Institute. And it made me feel better about it. I mean, reading it. And this was some kind of the key nuances that he didn't want to get overlooked. He said, if it's something where they're putting him in a boot, which the Chargers are, and they're saying it's an injury, I wouldn't think it's plantar fasciitis, which is the thing that lingers more and is, as he puts it, a degenerative thing that you're always having to kind of worry about. What he also said was, the hope is that I imagine they're letting it calm down, letting things heal, and then as long as they protect it, taping, insoles, things like that, then you can prevent it from getting aggravated or re-injured. So we're talking about an injury to the plantar fascia, not plantar fasciitis, which is what Antonio Gates had and what many athletes have had. Still, it could become a pain management thing. And in that case, I'm not super worried about Justin Herbert. And there's also ways to manage pain, right? With shots and different things like that.
And we know he's incredibly tough.
Super tough, right? Fractured rib cartilage, broken fingers. I think the other part of this is like, get out of here with the injury prone thing. Like the fact that that's even floating around at this point, like I understand this is 3 straight years where he's dealt with something. At the same time, one of those was inflicted by totally bad protection in the first year with the rib cartilage just getting absolutely smacked and smashed into the ground. Last year was more fluky, where one of them happens when he's chasing down an interception, gets his finger caught in a face mask. Like those aren't things that you're super worried about, or like re-aggravation type of things. This is kind of the first thing just from like a muscle kind of, situation where he's had something just happen to him. So, I think it's good news when you read that, but the dude's missed 4 games in 4 seasons. You can miss me with the injury prone moniker. I think that's insane that people are throwing it out there. But at the same time, I understand Chargers fans kind of, hesitancy to think the best is going to happen, right? Or not think this story's not over yet and we're going to hear more later on, or something's going to happen along the way, because that's what we've seen and become accustomed to. So I hope it's different this time, but I definitely feel like, hey, if it's a pain management thing, I find it hard to believe Justin Herbert would let himself miss a game.
I'm with you on that as well. And, hopefully, he's able to come back and he's able to feel good and he's ready for week 1. But I do know, I had the pleasure of speaking to Dan Wolkenstein of Chargers Unleashed, who was at today's training camp practice. And, the vibes without your superstar quarterback out there is definitely much different. So we're going to talk about what that seemed like, what that felt like from somebody who was on the sidelines covering it, and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. But first, I got to tell you guys about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts your car will ever need at the prices you want, it's easy to make the car the MVP and bring huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right. Well, I had a little bit of an impromptu guest on today's episode of the Locked On Chargers podcast. I reached out to Dan Wolkenstein of Chargers Unleashed. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at Dan W Sports. He is the co-host, also part of the LAFB network as well. I reached out to Dan a little bit late notice, and he was gracious enough to give me some of his time. He was at practice today as we were recording this on Thursday night, and so wanted to get his insights. But unfortunately, Dan, we have to start with some kind of bad news. And of course, that's, the fact that there was the announcement that Justin Herbert has a plantar fascia injury, and we will get to know the impact of that. But first, I just want to know what the vibes were like at practice Thursday night, and could you feel his absence?
Yeah. You mentioned it. It's certainly unfortunate news. It's certainly not something you want to hear. And his presence or lack of presence was felt. You can't help but notice it, not just with the play on the field, but you're seeing the touchdowns that are not being scored at nauseum. You're seeing the throws that aren't being made. You're seeing it's just a stark difference between a Justin Herbert led offense and any other offense. That's with any team. And it makes you appreciate what this Chargers team has. And now with a backup quarterback, this isn't a shot at other teams, but the offense looks like what 10, 15 other franchises look like right now without their franchise quarterback. So you could definitely feel it. Easton Stick is not Justin Herbert. And
no, he is not.
It was a weird day, honestly. It was just weird. The whole vibe was weird.
Yeah, no, I totally understand it, man. Like, I just woke up to this news. I was at work and I'm just like, no way, this can't be real. Like, not to start the season. Like, this can't be happening. But, at this point, the only real thing we know about Justin Herbert's injury is that he's going to be in a walking boot for approximately 2 weeks before, he's able to hopefully return to play in some capacity. Are you super concerned about how this could affect him and the team, or are you optimistic that this won't be a major factor once the season starts?
Well, both. Yeah. I think the optimist in me says, looking at the facts, the only thing we know is that it is a plantar fascia injury. We don't know the severity. We don't know any of that other stuff. But what we do know is this team has always been unapologetically honest about how they feel about things. And they don't need to say any of the things that they said. And, whether it's going through something, quote unquote, like we've heard Jim Harbaugh say in the past, I have faith in this staff and their abundance of caution. And in my heart of hearts, I believe that's what this is. I think they understand how important it is to get to week 1 healthy. And, the staff, I don't think puts out a statement like that, or at least hasn't, without there being some sort of confidence in it being accurate. Because the flip side of that, it just doesn't seem worth it.
Yeah.
So it's either that or this is a huge misstep by the staff and they put out something that maybe went too far and might regret it. But given all of the facts and all the information that I know and I've seen so far to this point with the staff and how they've handled things, it sounds like it is just a caution, being optimistic, and that he's probably fine.
God, man, I sincerely hope so.
Because I hope.
Dan, I can't go into another Raiders game without Justin Herbert. I just can't do it. I cannot see that again.
That's fair.
I refuse.
And that's fair because, again, this team is nothing like it would be if it wasn't Justin Herbert at quarterback. And it's just as simple as that. They're not going. Now, that being said, this team is a bit different in the sense of it being more qualified to withstand in case of emergency break glass moment for a week or two.
Right.
Under a Jim Harbaugh offense, a Greg Roman offense, a Jesse Minter defense, a run heavy scheme. Like, there are reasons to be optimistic regardless of the outcome. But still, like you said, it wasn't a great day for Chargers fans and for the news of their franchise quarterback going down. However long, doesn't matter.
Yeah, no question about it. Training camp without Justin Herbert is obviously going to look much different, but there's still a ton to watch out for. Another camp battle still rage on, especially with the pads on. You were out at Thursday night's practice. What stood out to you the most?
The defense looks strong today. And I think, is that Justin Herbert's absence being felt, or is that the defense looking strong? And it's probably both, if we're being honest. But the trenches looked really good. The run defense looked great for the most part. Tarheeb still had the play of the day on defense by far. You're seeing the pick six that he had on Max Duggan. Great interception, great skill. And, I think he is going to make that slot corner position battle really tough to lose for him. I really like what Tarheeb still brings. J.K. Dobbins looks tremendous.
I love to hear that, man.
Anytime you see him with the ball in space, he's eating. And he had a great explosive run today. Brendan Rice had another explosive catch today. Josh Palmer had a catch during red zone drills. There were still highlights either way, but I would say the things that stood out to me probably were physicality of the trenches. That is clear. They are showcasing that, as well as the defense is standing up, and the level of communication. Again, it's been talked about how there are no speakers and music. I think there is a distinct advantage to that, because you're hearing both sides, offense and defense, and how much communication is involved, and then barking at each other and against each other and having those two conflicting. It's making them better. And so the communication on this defense is definitely showing up, and that's without Junior Colson on defense. And that's with all of the stuff happening. But I would say the highlights for me would probably just be, aside from Justin Herbert not being there, it would be Tarheeb Stills looking pretty darn good. Christian Fulton also had another great day, and he keeps stacking these days back to back. You heard Jesse Minter talk about it yesterday. He's had a good day. I don't know if that pick would have counted. It may have been a sack. I'm not sure. But he came down with it, and folks were excited about it. So, those would probably be my main takeaways.
I mean, speaking of sacks, another guy who, according to the other beat writers, that was going crazy at practice today was Joey Bosa. Yeah. So did you see that, and kind of what did you see from Joey out there at practice today? I'm going to get it back into this interview with Dan Wolkenstein and why Joey Bosa was absolutely tearing it up and why he looks absolutely phenomenal, and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. But first, I got to tell you guys about FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop, but as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like we want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. For today, we're getting away from football, and I love the Padres squaring off against the Rockies. Colorado has been really bad all year, but has had the Padres number. But that is going to change tonight. San Diego is scorching hot, winning 9 out of their last 10 games, and I'm taking the Padres -1.5 runs at +115. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, Joey's an animal. He's tremendous. And Jim Harbaugh talks about the press conference that he was very impressed with him specifically. He wins reps constantly. And you saw, all the stuff about him and Joe Alt previously. And he's just, again, we've all talked about it, but that, we talk about the asterisk of when healthy, but he's motivated, man. And he gets after it. And it's fun to see those guys both in the drills as well as they get to 11-11. I mean, that defensive edge group is nasty. Like they have an opportunity to do something that we haven't seen in a long time. And I don't remember the last time I've seen an edge group go 4 deep that well. And Joey Bosa's hungry. Like he's hungry. I think you heard Jesse Minter allude to that yesterday of the influence Khalil Mack has on him. And Joey Bosa just looks refreshed. He looks rejuvenated. He looks like he loves this new staff and the new scheme and what the scheme allows him to do and maybe not do. So, Joey Bosa is making his presence known. Let's put it that way.
I love it. There's nothing more than I want to see than a full healthy season and just look back and see when the dust settles and see what that stat line looks like. Cause I think it could be extremely impressive, but you've been to several practices so far throughout training camp and seen a lot of players have some standout moments, but when you're looking at camp as a whole, who have been the biggest winners in your eyes?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think Ladd McConkey has to be on that short list.
Yeah.
His ability to separate, his explosiveness.
He just looks different, right?
He just looks different. He plays the part. And you see him absolutely roasting folks in one-on-one drills. And I said this to Jake, my co-host, but it has like the Keenan Allen vibes in the sense of he's just always open and he makes it look easy.
Yeah. And
that is such a nice safety valve to have. I would say Christian Fulton has looked good. He has looked good this year so far. The offensive line, I think in general this week has looked pretty good. Joe Alt, everyone wants to know about the fifth overall pick.
Yeah.
And look, is he going to win every rep against 2 most likely Hall of Fame players? No. And he probably shouldn't, but he's holding his own.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah. And then honestly, J.K. Dobbins, man. I think all of us would agree that, again, if healthy, like that guy's a top 5-10 running back in the NFL.
He's ripping off 6 yards a carry when he was healthy, man.
And he's doing more than that at camp. Like I'm telling you right now, almost every time I see him in 11-11 periods, he's ripping off an explosive run.
I love it.
He is tremendous. And the overall impression is just this team, we all said it, right? And now we're getting to see it with our own eyes in 11-11. We'll see it more during a joint practice and preseason, but it's just a different identity. And so more than a single person, I think it's just this team's attention to detail and the physicality and I think it was building a bully, as Tony Jefferson said today, that this team identity is. And look, we've seen this team lose that side of bulliness for years. And, they're going at it full tilt with an energy unknown to mankind. And it's just fun to see for us covering this team for so long, this team actually being that type of team. So that's probably the biggest takeaway is just that identity shift. It's not only seen, but every player that you speak to, every podium press conference, it's about the attention to detail. It's about the willingness and ability to teach and learn on the fly and adaptability and physicality. All of the things that we've all been praying for and clawing our eyes out for not getting. That's what is happening now. And we'll see if it comes to fruition on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays.
Absolutely, we will. Everyone always talks about players who are standing out, but not enough people are talking about the players we haven't seen enough from at training camp. Are there any players that you have that haven't really made a lot of noise so far that you're hoping to see more from during the rest of camp and into the preseason?
That's a tough one. And this isn't a slight on any specific player, but I think one that I think Gus Edwards is one that, and he's been dealing with an injury thing. Same with Junior Colson, same thing. I think those 2 players both are going to have massive impacts on this team that we just haven't really had a chance to see quite yet. I think, Quentin Johnston would probably be one where it's not that I'm not seeing improvement or production or good play from him, but I think he could use like that explosive play to kind of help with whether it's confidence or help with kind of tying things together. The offensive line I think looks pretty good. The defensive line looks really good.
It's good.
Dan Henley looks fast. But I wouldn't say anybody who's like played terribly. I think it's more the players that haven't been out there that I'm like, oh, because you know how big they are to this team.
Oh yeah. I mean, availability is one of the best abilities, Dan. And if you can't be out there on the football field, then I don't know what you can do for me. But, the Chargers have their first joint practice of camp on Sunday against the Rams, which is exciting because the teams will get to hit another team for the first time. What are you most excited to watch for when the Chargers and the crosstown rivals join them at camp on Sunday?
It's a good question. I think this team is ready to play somebody else other than the guys in their own locker room.
Sure.
And you could tell it sometimes feels like some of these players are like caged animals, not able to do everything that they really want to do.
Yeah. Derwin comes to mind, right?
100%. And Khalil Mack comes to mind as well. And Asante Samuel Jr. come to mind. Like some of these players, and we'll see how many of these guys actually play during preseason.
Sure.
But I think seeing this team and the physicality that we've all heard and seen and witnessed through practice, see it against another team who's trying to do the same team and trying to bend another man's will like that. I think that's what I'm looking forward to. Like, is this trench warfare we've all seen the importance of it? Will it trickle into an actual game against opponents?
Yeah.
Because we've been burned for how many years now without it. And so I think it's just how much of it will translate to a football game. And also, it'll be interesting to see how together and connected the defense is, because that's been something that's really eluded this Chargers defense, is playing cohesive, fundamentally sound football, good communication, sound tackling, like all of those things. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing. And that's all Jesse Minter. That's all Jim Harbaugh, Steve Klink, like all of those guys. I think just how connected this team is and the communications can be big.
Yeah. What are the differences going to be on defense? How does that look? How is the offensive philosophy going to translate? How does that running game look? How does that, just overall theme of being aggressive, how does that look when it goes up against another opponent, right? I think we're all excited to see what that looks like. But I think all Charger fans were ready for a big change after the Brandon Staley era ended unceremoniously. And they got the guy that they wanted in Jim Harbaugh. As someone that, has been covering the Chargers for several seasons and seen many training camps, what has gotten you the most excited about the way Jim Harbaugh has run things?
Wow. It is very different. Yeah. And, Alohi Gilman was at the podium today and was alluding to just how different the vibes are and how much he and this entire team loves Jim Harbaugh. And, I think the confidence that the staff brings, if I were to say the thing that I'm most excited about is, Alohi talked about the buy-in of this team, and rightly so, right? You have a championship winning head coach now who's been a proven NFL head coach, who's played the quarterback position, who's played, like, he's done it all, and he's won at a very high clip throughout
everywhere.
And there's a method to his madness. And I think seeing his attention to detail and his fundamentals trickle into every part of this team, like, they know no bounds.
Yeah.
And so I think just the excitement of just how different things are, whether it's the attention to detail and, not having the music on where it's all business, or seeing the tempo and how fast these players are in and out of their plays and how quick they're going into different progressions of different series, and just all of the levels of details that this coaching staff is in, and all the new little wrinkles that Jim Harbaugh brings to the table. It's just refreshing, I think. And you're seeing it with the players, right? Like, I haven't seen Joey Bosa look like this. I haven't seen Derwin James look like this. Alohi Gilman talked about how different this is. Like, Tony Jefferson talks about how much he loves this new coaching staff. Jesse Minter is being raved by everybody with his ability, not how smart he is, that's one thing, but how able he is at coaching and teaching these things.
Yeah.
Because the previous regime, say what you will, there were some smart guys there. But what you say versus what is heard, there is a disconnect. There was disconnect.
Yeah.
And that is what I think is most exciting, is just seeing it translate and everyone echoing the same things. It's not just one person saying things, but it's everybody doing it. So it's hard not to be full on in hype mode for this Chargers team. How much that'll translate to wins and losses, I don't know. But I can promise you that this team is not going to lose the way it did before. Like, this team is going to punch in the mouth and be in it all the time.
I love it, man. And honestly, I think one of the things for me that I absolutely love is that Jim Harbaugh is not just talking about it, he's being about it. He's got the cleats on, he's on the field, he's working out with the players, he's pulling sleds, he's doing push-ups, he's right there alongside the guys. And it's impossible not to respect and want to follow your leader when he is not just saying it, he's doing it. But that's going to wrap things up for this interview here with Dan Wolkenstein. Thank you so much for giving me some of your time, Dan. And make sure you guys go follow Dan on Twitter at Dan W Sports, and make sure you check out his podcast, of course, Chargers Unleashed. He does, and his partner Jake does some fantastic work covering this team. Thank you so much for your time, Dan.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right. Huge shout out to Dan Wolkenstein from Chargers Unleashed, and of course, my partner, Daniel Wade, for jumping on the show to talk about the Justin Herbert injury and to talk about what happened at training camp. Things are going to go back to normal on Monday when Daniel steps back behind the main mic as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast. Thank you guys so much for bearing with me as I was able to give Daniel Wade some time off, but that is going to wrap things up for today's episode. Make sure and like and subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel. Go follow us on Facebook at Locked On Chargers, on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and on Twitter at Locked On LAC. You can find me on Twitter at DroTalkSD and my partner Daniel Wade on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports. Make sure you're back with us on Monday when Daniel Wade returns to the podcast. But until then, go Bolts.